All right, everyone. So I want to talk to you guys about the film Hereditary. Well, what can I say about this movie? It came out in 2018, and it is by far one of the best horror films ever made. It is, man, if I had a top 10 list of the best horror movies, Hereditary would definitely have a position in that list. Hereditary is it's just a masterpiece in so many different ways. The way that it was filmed, first off, there are so many scenes in Hereditary where the camera moves down a corridor or moves through the house and you just don't really know what to expect. Especially, I mean, this is the case obviously when you first see the movie and you don't know what's going to happen, so there's a whole lot of suspense. And the way that the film builds suspense is quite well done. And then also you have the texture of the movie. The texture is just one of the characteristics of this movie that make it really, really good and also really watchable. There are too many movies nowadays, not just horror films, but just movies in general. There are too many movies nowadays that are very, very bright. I mean, the color of these movies is very bright. And I don't think that movies need to be brighter than films in the 1990s. In the 1990s, movies had really just a great balance between brightness and dimness, and it just made it much more watchable. I do not like movies that are overly bright. When they're overly bright, it just seems... it's not pleasing to the eye. All right, it's just not pleasing to the eye. It's too bright. It looks way too artificial. It looks very fake, and I am reminded that I am watching a movie. When you watch a really good movie, you know it's a good movie when while you're watching it, you forget that you're watching a movie. That's why people will watch certain horror movies and they'll say, oh man, this movie's so creepy, and man, this movie just freaks me out, and oh man, this movie just gets my heart racing, or man, this movie just gives me goosebumps. And well, why is that? Because your brain, while watching this film, has forgotten that you are watching a horror movie and you're being immersed in the story. And one of the ways that a movie immerses you is the texture of the film. And it's surprising that I'm not really seeing enough people talking about this. I have seen very few people talk about this subject when it comes to the discussion on what makes a movie good and what makes a movie bad. And one of the things that makes a film good is the texture of the movie. So for example, so I started this film talking about Hereditary, now I'm talking about something else. It's not really something else. It interconnects with the theme of this video. The texture of Hereditary is dim, it's not overly bright, and because of that, it helps to immerse your brain into the film. And it's kind of hard to explain this because you may be thinking, okay, well, what is it about the texture that makes the film good? The texture has to be dim. It has to have a good equilibrium between dimness and brightness. If it's too bright, it looks fake and it just looks chalky and it looks tacky and cheesy. It just looks terrible. For example, you watch these really shitty ass like Hallmark movies or movies that look like Hallmark films, and one thing that they all have in common is that they're overly bright. It's like this: when you watch a lot of very recently done World War II movies, a lot of them are really bright. And for that reason, they do not immerse you well enough into the story because it looks fake. And when it looks fake, when it looks artificialized, you are constantly being reminded that you are watching a movie. When you watch Saving Private Ryan, which came out back in the 1990s, Saving Private Ryan has the perfect equilibrium between brightness and dimness. And there is more dimness than brightness in Saving Private Ryan, because you are watching a very depressing and sad and horrific movie, because you're watching a movie about one of the most horrific events to have ever happened in the history of mankind, and that is World War II. We're talking about around 100 million or so people being killed in a war. So it has to fit. The color, the texture of the film has to fit the weight of the story. Now, if you're watching a romantic comedy, who gives a shit? Because it's a romantic comedy. You're going to watch it and you're going to forget about it. And that's if you actually watch that dog shit. But when you watch a serious movie, we got to have more dimness than brightness. And films do not need to be brighter than the movies in the 1990s. 1990s had some great texture. Early 2000s movies had some great texture. But something happened in the late 2000s. This is when this very terrible trend in cinema began, in my experience. I could be wrong. But the first time I saw an overly bright movie was in, I want to say 2008. Had to have been in 2008. I saw the fourth Indiana Jones movie in theater. It was when Indiana Jones goes to Peru. Yeah, he goes to Peru. And he fights some Russians, and the Russians are trying to revive some ancient aliens in Peru, and it connects to the Incan civilization. I mean, the story was bullshit. Like, the fourth Indiana Jones, I'm not going to consider it to even be canon. Like, I don't think Indiana Jones 4 is canon. To me, the canon of Indiana Jones, the cinematic universe of Indiana Jones, is the three movies. That's it. 1, 2, and 3. Temple of Doom, the Last Crusader, and the other one where the Ark of the Covenant. Right, that's Indiana Jones. The fourth one is dog shit. It's like Gladiator 2. In my mind, there is no such thing as Gladiator 2. You call it whatever you want. It's not Gladiator 2. It's not canon. It's not in the same universe as Gladiator. It's bullshit. Gladiator 2 is garbage. And also, Gladiator 2 is another overly bright movie. And the texture of Gladiator 2 is very different from the texture of the actual Gladiator movie that had Russell Crowe. The actual Gladiator movie with Russell Crowe had great texture. The texture fit the story, especially in the beginning of the movie where Russell Crowe is in ancient Germania and he's fighting the Germanians, and it's cold and it's cloudy and it's dim and it's depressing and it's gloomy, and the vibe of that part of the movie really fits the gravity of the situation that Russell Crowe, or that Maximus Aurelius, is in that part of the film. Same thing when he goes to North Africa. Yes, it's brighter, but it's brighter because he's in the desert. Other than that, it's not so bright where it looks fake. It still looks realistic. It still has the right fitting texture. When you watch Indiana Jones 4, when he goes to Peru, it's a very, very bright movie. And this was the first time I had ever seen this bright, artificial looking, fake looking, tacky texture in a movie. That was the first time. And I remember being in the theater watching this movie thinking, what is this garbage? What is this awful texture? I don't like it. And I had never seen it before. And I knew, like, this is garbage. This is complete horseshit. And then ever since then, I was noticing this trend, just continuing on and on and on and on, being done in movies. And now when I watch a trailer and I see that overly bright texture, that overly bright color, I don't watch the movie. I don't even waste my time. I know the movie's bullshit. Like, I know, you know how they say that you know when a video game is bad once you see once you see a trace of wokeism in it? Because when you see a trace of wokeism, it's an indication that the video game lacks or is absent of creativity. So it's the same thing with movies. When I watch when I see a film trailer and the trailer is overly bright, I know the film is going to be dog shit, and I don't waste my time with it. I had a similar experience with the Conjuring the Devil Made Me Do It movie, which was complete horseshit. I didn't even finish watching the movie, but I saw the trailer and I thought, okay, like this is gonna be bullshit. Or I saw the thumbnail. I don't really remember. It's been years, but I remember seeing some of the thumbnail or whatever on YouTube and thinking, all right, I'm gonna give this film a shot. And then I remember watching the movie, and I couldn't get past the first 20 minutes of it because the texture was off. The film seemed very rushed. And that's another thing also. Okay, so here's another example. So The Equalizer. Equalizer 1 was perfect with Denzel Washington. Great movie, great texture, great pacing. It didn't feel rushed. Very well done movie, The Equalizer with Denzel Washington. Equalizer 2. All right, Equalizer 2, while it was not as good as the first Equalizer, it was still a decent movie. It's watchable. There's a lot of good action in Equalizer 2. There's some great acting from Denzel. Very good acting from Denzel Washington, especially the scene where he goes to that young man who's getting into a life of crime, and he says, and what did he say? He says, "You don't know death. You don't know death." Like it's such a very well done movie. Denzel Washington is such a good actor. One of the greatest actors of our time. Him and Tom Hanks, both great actors. And so Equalizer 2 was a good movie. I think it was a great movie. It's not as good as the first one, but still a great movie. Then you have Equalizer 3. Now, Equalizer 3 was entertaining, but not like the first two. Equalizer 3 was entertaining in the sense that it was funny. And I found myself laughing throughout much of this movie, Equalizer 3. Because it was so rushed and it was so corny, and like, I'm just gonna spoil it for you guys because it's not like the film is nothing really special. But Equalizer 3, it involves Denzel Washington's character, the Equalizer, going to Italy. All right, he goes to Sicily, and he goes to this Timbuktu Italian village that's in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of the mountains. And he's the only black dude in the whole town. And the whole town is ran by the mafia. And he's the only black dude in the whole town. And he just so happens to meet a black chick living in this town. Like, what are the odds, right? Okay, things happen, whatever. But it was just funny the way that they did this whole movie. Like, black dude in the middle of this town, everyone's Italian. All of a sudden, there's this one African-American chick, or I'm not sure if she was African-American. She could have been British. I don't remember. It's been a while since I saw the movie, but he just so happens to meet this black chick in this town. It's just a coincidence. And then he faces the mafia, and he's this middle-aged African-American dude, and you could tell just by the way he looks that his joints are hurting. Like, this dude's got joint pains in his shoulders, his elbows. He's got bad knees. And he's just beating the hell out of these massive Italian dudes. We're talking Italian gangsters who go to the gym. They have guns. They look tough. They're vicious, ruthless criminals. And this middle-aged black dude from the inner cities of wherever, Chicago, is just whooping these people's asses. Nothing can beat him. He's taking them all out. I mean, the dude is freaking he's the black Superman. But it was just a funny-ass movie for that purpose. It was a funny-ass movie. It wasn't a serious film. But the texture in The Equalizer 3 was kind of off. It was overly bright. It was overly saturated. That's another thing. Overly saturated texture. And it looked like, you know how when if you've ever done content creation, you've probably tried to make thumbnails, or you do make thumbnails. So you can go onto these thumbnail makers, and you can saturate a photo. You can actually adjust the color of a photo. And you can make a photo overly bright. You can overemphasize the colors of a photo. And you have to be balanced with these programs. You have to be balanced when you're doing this sort of work. You can't make a photo overly bright. If you make it overly bright, it looks fake and artificialized. You got to make it look real. If you try to overemphasize the colors and the textures of the photo, then you oversaturate it and it looks even more fake. So you got to have a right balance. You have to, now there's also on these thumbnail makers, there's also the function or you have the ability to make a photo look sharper, so you can make the color and the different characteristics of the photo look sharper. So if I were to take a photo of myself, I can make myself look sharper using a thumbnail maker. I could maybe just amplify certain features on my face. I can amplify my hair color. I can make myself look a little bit clearer. But if I were to take that adjuster and scale it all the way to its highest point, I would look way too saturated, and I wouldn't look realistic. I would look very unrealistic. I would look like I would look like a piece of AI comic book art. It would look like shit. And people would know automatically, like, okay, that looks obviously artificialized, it looks fake, and it's going to turn people off. It's not going to look real. So you got to have a right balance between making something look sharp and making something look like some dog shit out of a cheaply done AI slop comic book. So that's what you have to keep in mind. When you have a film that has a texture that is overly saturated, it looks like shit. So, and it's not watchable. It's not watchable at all. So Hereditary, when you watch Hereditary, it has a very fitting texture, and it's very welcoming. And it's not welcoming, that's a bad term, but it pulls you in. It immerses you into the story. If the texture and the color is too bright and overly saturated, it looks fake, and it's impossible to get the human mind to immerse itself into something that looks fake. The human mind can only immerse itself into something that looks real. It's the same thing with really good artwork. Really good artwork is going to have great tint, great texture. And the dimness of the artwork is going to fit what the artwork is presenting. So if the artwork is presenting something out of a war, then the dimness of the painting is going to be a little bit darker, and it's going to look gloomier, and that's going to pull you in because the color is going to fit the story that it's presenting. It's going to fit the event. So it's the same thing with movies. And when films are overly saturated, they suck. And the thing is that the market is, the film market, the world of cinema, whatever you want to call it, has been overly saturated with slop artwork, slop movies. And there's so many films out there that look overly bright, just overly bright. I noticed this also with the movie The Nun. The Nun, all right? The Nun sucks. All the Nun movies suck. All of them. The Nun, The Nun 2, all right? They all suck. Of course, the first Nun sucks a lot more than the second one. The Nun is the biggest load of dog shit I've ever seen in a horror movie. And the color is very bright, and it's overly saturated. And I remember I had a lot of hope for The Nun because it was such a well-marketed movie, and the hype for this film, I've never seen a bigger piece of dog shit of a film that got hyped up as much as The Nun. It was garbage, but yet it was marketed so well. And the original trailer for The Nun, like, remember when you went onto YouTube and you saw these random Nun trailers that would pop up? They were really well done, and they made you want to see the movie. And I think I remember even hearing something online. Someone spread this rumor that the Nun trailer was so scary that they had to ban it or something like that. I mean, it's obvious bullshit, but like all that type of stuff helps market the movie. And The Nun was just garbage. I mean, the story was garbage, the acting was garbage, everything about it was garbage, the writing was crap. There was absolutely nothing redeemable about the movie The Nun. Nothing. There is nothing, and I mean nothing redeemable about the movie The Nun. And to make it worse, this is not the icing on the cake. This is the dog shit on the cake that's already terribly baked. The texture of the film was overly bright and overly saturated, which made the film look even faker than it already did. It was garbage. Now, I sounded like an East Coast guy first. It was garbage, complete garbage. So then you go to a horror movie like Hereditary, very well put together. Texture is great. Session 9, which is another film that I talked about. It was the last movie that I did a review on. Session 9 was a great horror movie, one of the best horror films I've ever seen. There is another horror film that I've done a review on that I thought was really good, and it was called Immaculate. Immaculate was a really good horror movie. Texture was great. The pacing of the film was excellent. The scariness of the movie was there. It was a creepy movie. And those are characteristics that we look for. I'm not saying that I'm a film reviewer, like we, the film review community, but just we as humans. Those are signs. Those are characteristics that we look for to identify and to recognize a good movie. Like, we know you don't have to be a film reviewer to recognize a good movie. Like, really, I mean, Rotten Tomatoes has been to a great extent very rotten, because Rotten Tomatoes will give really well done movies like 60%, and they'll give some sodomite film 100% rating, 100% positive approval rating, Rotten Tomatoes. Oh yes. So the people in New York are going to dictate to you what is and what isn't a good movie. We know what a good movie is. Generally speaking, we humans know what good art is. We know what a good movie is. And that is why there have been movies in the past that were low budget, but were loved by a lot of people because they were well put together. Great example is No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men was a low budget movie, but it was very well done, very well directed, very well paced, very well put together. Acting was good. It was creepy as hell. I consider No Country for Old Men to be a horror movie. I mean, Chigurh is basically like a human version of Mike Myers. He's like a more human version of that. He's really creepy. And it's realistic because we know for a fact that there are Chigurhs out there in the world. Just look at Mexico with the Sicarios. But you look at No Country for Old Men, I mean, low budget, but well put together, and very well textured movie. It's not overly bright, even though the story takes place in Texas, which is typically a bright state. But it's very well textured, not overly saturated, and the texture fits the story, and it pulls you in. And when you watch that film, especially when you watch it for the first time, you have to remind yourself that you're watching a movie. Whereas with films like The Nun or Gladiator 2 or Indiana Jones 4, you're just constantly being reminded, oh, you're watching a movie, and it's dog shit. There's some great examples out there. I talked about Immaculate. I'm trying to remember other things, other films that really... like Black Hawk Down. I mean, Black Hawk Down had great texture, even though it was in a bright setting. Great texture. Now, going back to Hereditary is just a creepy ass movie, and there are scenes in Hereditary that just made my hairs go up and made me have goosebumps. There is a scene in the film Hereditary that always gets me. It's so damn, oh my gosh, it's so creepy. It is creepy as hell. And when I first saw the film and I saw this scene, I had to pause the movie, and I was like, oh dude, I watched Hereditary at like 3:30 in the morning. And it was raining. So perfect. It was September of 2018, raining all night, 3-something in the morning, and I'm watching Hereditary. My black cat is next to me, and it's perfect, right? This is just absolute perfection. And there was no reason to complain. And I was watching Hereditary, and there was this scene that happened where I just had to pause it, and I was like, hell no. Oh, hell no. Again, when I'm watching a horror movie, I don't want to be reminded that I'm watching a movie. I want to be immersed. And it's a scene where this young man is running away from, this satanic occult group that indulges in the Kabbalah, and there are Kabbalistic themes in the cult in the movie. And he's running. Right? And he sees this dude. And it doesn't show you everything, but it implies what is happening. And the dude is naked, and he's staring at this guy, and the dude smiles with this sadistic smile. Oh, I paused the movie, I said, hell no. Hell no. This movie is hella creepy. Creepy ass movie. It's so disturbing. And the young man who's running, his mom is in the occult. His mom's in the occult, and they're basically doing some weird-ass Bohemian Grove level stuff. Like Bohemian Grove, if you guys don't know, Bohemian Grove, I don't know if they're still doing the Bohemian Grove. I don't know that. But I know Alex Jones blew the lid on that. Bohemian Grove was a cult, and I say was just in a speculative way. It could be still going on. Probably is. But Bohemian Grove was a cult that the Republican Party was into. And I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was solely a Republican thing. So it was a cult that all these Republican politicians would get involved in. And they would go into this forest somewhere in, I want to say, California. And, California has a lot of forests, especially if you go to Northern California, they have red tree. What do they call them? I forgot the name, but it's like red oak trees or whatever. And these trees are super tall and they're super old. But anyway, these Republican politicians would go into the forest and they would stand before a giant statue of an owl, and they would do a mock human sacrifice where they would take an effigy that looked like a human being and they would burn it on an altar for this giant god owl or owl god. And that is very Masonic. If I'm not mistaken, in the Masonic Lodge, the owl is a symbol of wisdom. And in the Bohemian Grove Republican Party cult, the effigy represents one's conscience. And so the idea was, if you are going to be a man in power, if you're going to be someone who has power, you are going to have to sear and burn and effectively destroy your conscience, destroy your internal moral principles. You have no morals. Get your morals and burn them in the fire. You have no morals. And so that whole thing really explained, and it still explains, the behavior of the Republican Party. I mean, the fact that the Republican Party started a war, an illegal invasion of a country that never attacked us, Iraq, which led to the deaths of literally millions of people. And we're sitting here talking about, immigrants in America. America literally, people are saying immigrants are invading America. America literally invaded a country and started a war that killed millions of people. So give me a break. But you would have to have had to sear your conscience to do something like that. So the Bohemian Grove cult really fit the Republican Party, and it still fits the Republican Party. And so there was I remember hearing that Richard Nixon talked about this Bohemian Grove cult, and he said that the Bohemian Grove was just a bunch of sodomites getting naked in the forest in California. And so this movie, Hereditary, has this cult, and it's these guys and women who are into Kabbalistic magic, and they recite Hebrew spells. Yes, Hebrew is said in this movie. Hebrew is spoken in this film in one scene in the movie, so it makes it quite obvious. And they're doing some Bohemian Grove stuff. And so this young man, he finds out that his mom is in this cult, in this Kabbalistic cult, and he's trying to escape, and the cult wants him. The cult wants him to be in the cult, and they want him to be the leader of the cult because his grandma recently has passed away, and now they want him to be the successor. And his mom is going after him. His mom wants to kill him. And I think the reason why his mom wants to kill him is because she wants to be the leader of the cult, because it was her mother who was the leader of the cult, or at least one of the leaders of the cult, and so she wants to succeed her mom and take her place. But the cult wants the son to be the leader of the cult, and the cult wants the son to be possessed by a Kabbalistic demon by the name of Paimon. I think that's what his name is, Paimon, and it's a Kabbalistic demon. And they want Paimon to live in this guy's body. I mean, it's pretty creepy stuff. It's pretty demonic. And the mom wants to kill him. And so the mom is played by Toni Collette. Now, Toni Collette, I would say, is the best female actor. I'll just say actress to make it short. She is probably the best actress of our time. She's really good. She does a really good job in this movie. Her facial expressions are really well done. And she dabbles into witchcraft in this movie, Kabbalistic witchcraft, and she gets really hardcore into it. And she wants to get her son into it as well. And the whole thing just spirals out of control to the point where the mom becomes possessed, and then the mom wants to kill the son. There's just so much suspense in this movie. Every scene in this movie pulls you in. There's not, and that's another trait of a really well done movie, is every scene is done with purpose. There was a Russian playwright who said something that was very pertinent to what makes a good play, and the same thing can be applied to cinema. He said that everything in a good play has to pertain to the story. Everything that you see in the play has to pertain to the story. He says that if you see, I think he said something to the likes of, if you see a shotgun framed on the wall, and that shotgun has nothing to do with the story, then take it out. So everything has to be connected to the story. And in this movie, every scene connects, and every scene is done with purpose, and every scene has tension, it has a build-up to tension, it has purpose, and it connects to the story. And there's so many films out there that you watch them and you'll see scenes that have nothing to do with the movie, or you'll see scenes that are just sort of out of place, and you'll have actors who have small talk and things seem rushed and they're just terribly paced out. That's not the case with Hereditary. In Hereditary, you have a great balance between good pacing and then foreshadowing. So you have pacing where it's a slow burning movie, so things are kind of slowed down in the movie. The story is not rushed, which is always important. Because when a story is rushed, you don't give the audience enough time to familiarize themselves with the characters, and so therefore, if you are not familiarized with the characters, then it's impossible for you to immerse yourself into the story. So a good movie is going to pace itself out accordingly, so that the audience can become familiar with the characters and then immerse themselves into the story. So there's a good balance between pacing and then there's foreshadowing. So there's foreshadowing that balances out with the pacing, and so you have these in every single scene in Hereditary. Well, except for the last part, but let's just say in the first half of the movie or in the first stage of the film, every scene has some foreshadowing in it. There's these little signs that seem obscure initially, but then after you watch the film, and then you watch the film again, you'll see how these little foreshadowing signs connect with the story, and connect with the apex and the climax of the movie. So it's just a very well directed movie. It's creepy, it's dark, it's suspenseful. And if you haven't seen Hereditary and you like horror films, then I highly recommend that you see it. It's definitely in my top 10 list of best horror films ever done. I really have no complaints about Hereditary. I really don't. It's just a creepy ass movie that gets under your skin, and it especially when you see it for the first time. And it just it's a little bit spine chilling, I'll just put it that way. And to this day, I'll watch Hereditary and it just gives me the creeps. And yeah, very well done movie and very good texture. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. I've talked long enough about this. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.